Crimeroom is designed for mature audiences and is unsuitable for young or sensitive listeners. Discretion is strongly advised.
I took out the gun and I said, well, this is not how it's going to work. This is basically a robbery. And he started laughing and didn't take it seriously. And that was a point where LaRue sort of manhandled him and said, lie down or whatever, lie down on the floor. And he actually lunged for LaRue like a rugby lunge, going for someone. And I panicked at that moment and I pulled the trigger and I shot him twice.
Welcome to Crime Room, a true crime podcast. I'm the speaker, and my name is X. It doesn't matter who I am, it only matters what they did. Join us. Enter the room. Krugersdorp is a large community in South Africa. It is located in the West Rand district and has a population of 378,821 people. This qualifies it as the 8th largest city in Gauteng. Between 2012 and 2016, South Africa, particularly Krugersdorp, witnessed a chain of gruesome murders, all carried out in unbelievable ways to closely related people and professionals. These deaths were collectively referred to as the Krugersdorp Killings by local media. The victims were either members of the same church, colleagues in the same office, or residents of the same neighbourhood. They all seemed to have a connection. The police had no doubt that these murders were closely related and carried out by the same person or group of people. The question remained, however, who was behind these cruel acts? On July 26, 2012, police received reports of the murder of Natasha Berger and Joyce Boonzayer. They were neighbours before the gruesome murder. Natasha was also a member of the Overcomers Through Christ Church or group. She was a 31-year-old lawyer. She died in Joyce's house in Centurion. The police believe that her killers, whoever they were, had forced 68-year-old Joyce to lure Natasha to her house and then killed them both by slitting their throats. However, without enough evidence, the case remained unsolved. Shortly after, on August 14th of the same year, the police discovered Pastor Reginald Ben Dixon in his home in Honeydew, Western Johannesburg. He had been stabbed and hacked to death with an axe. Before his gruesome demise, 75-year-old Reginald was a pastor at the Overcomers Through Christ Church. Before the murders, members of the Overcomers Through Christ Church had been targeted with petrol bombs. After the 3 recent deaths, threats were turned towards the church. On October 11th of the same year, 25-year-old Michaela Valentine was killed. Until her death, she was married to Zach Valentine, a member of the OTC. The police discovered her body in pieces. According to them, blood and intestines were splattered on the ceiling. She died in their home in the Sunset View complex in Rumzig in the West Rand. In the following years, 7 more murders would occur, all gruesome. Police believe the assaults were probably for financial reasons, as they happened alongside armed robbery. 3 years later, on November 27th in 2015, the Krugersdorp community saw the death of a couple, Peter and Joan Mayer, aged 51 and 47. They were a married couple who owned a printing shop in Krugersdorp. Their bodies were found at their home in Rudd Street, where they had been stabbed to death. On December 6th of the same year, 44-year-old Jared Jackson had been set ablaze in the driver's seat of a car near Steyn in the Free State. He was a neighbour of the late Michaela Valentine. The pair both slept rough. On January 27, 2016, Glenn McGregor, who was 57 years old, was shot to death in his flat in Ranfontein. Before his death, Glenn was a tax consultant. Just 4 months later, May of 2016, brought 3 more deaths. On May 10th, 64-year-old Anthony Schofield was found dead in the boot of his car, which had been abandoned on Premier Street in Krugersdorp. His property had been stolen and 9,600 rand had been withdrawn from his bank account. On May 26th, 29-year-old Kevin McAlpine's body was discovered on the corner of Sive Wright and Francis Street in Krugersdorp. He had been robbed of his wedding ring, his shoes, his laptop, his wristwatch and 1,300 rand in cash. Before his death, McAlpine had been married to 26-year-old Kezia, who was 6 months pregnant at the time. He was killed 3 days after celebrating his first wedding anniversary. The third victim of that month was 52-year-old Hanley Laitkin, whose body was discovered on May 31st along Ranfontein River on a farm. Her cell phone, wristwatch, gold and diamond ring and 3,000 rand in cash were stolen. The deceased's car was found parked in front of the Krugersdorp private hospital. Until her death, Hanny was an estate agent. By this time, the police had formed a special task team to investigate the Krugersdorp murders. They had their eyes on the suspect and were making arrangements for their arrest. Marinda Steyn was a former teacher and a 52-year-old mother of 2 children, Marcel and LaRue Steyn, aged 20 and 22. The family lived in Krugersdorp, South Africa. Cecilia Steyn was their neighbour, who happened to have the same family name but was of no relation to them. Zach Valentine, a 34-year-old insurance broker, was another neighbour of Cecilia's. The friends had one other thing in common, apart from all being neighbours. They were all members of the Overcomers Through Christ group. Cecilia had known Zach Valentine since 1994 when she met him in church. Zach had graduated from Northwest University with distinction. She had done him a favour by paying for his insurance policy when it was in arrears, and they fast became friends. He nominated her as one of the beneficiaries of his life cover, as his parents were not on talking terms with him after he pierced his ears against their will. Zach discussed with Cecilia how his life policy would be distributed if he died. Marinda, Marcel and LaRue had all met Cecilia Steyn, a former self-proclaimed Satanist and witch, in 2008. Marcel Steyn was an introvert. She even refused to be captured in photographs. She was a student who loved reading and held a devout loyalty to her dear mother, Marinda Steyn. LaRue Steyn, elder brother to Marcel, wasn't the outwardly emotional type, but he too was extraordinarily close to his mother. Cecilia Steyn, John Bernard, Zach Valentine, and Miranda Steyn, and her husband and children, were collectively known as the Steyn Gang. They spent all of their time together and eventually received matching tattoos that read Electus per Deus, meaning elected by God. They also always spoke of what they referred to as our God and believed they alone were special. Police became suspicious of the Steyn Gang. After deep investigation into the group and crimes, police believed that the murders had a religious element to them and that the gang had committed the acts as a cult ritual. The Steyn Gang were arrested for the murders of Hanley Laitkin, Kevin McAlpine and Anthony Schofield based on the police's unwavering efforts to find evidence. However, the police soon discovered that the group was also responsible for the deaths of Peter and Joan Mayer, Glenn McGregor and Jared Jackson. By December 2017, the gang was charged with the murders of Michaela Valentine, who was a Steyn gang member, and Zach Valentine's wife. They were also charged with the murders of Natasha Berger, Joyce Boonzire, and Pastor Reginald Ben Dixon. All of the murders had occurred in Krugersdorp and the surrounding areas. Other crimes the Steyn gang were charged with were robbery, identity theft, aggravated assault, possession of an unlicensed firearm, illegal possession of ammunitions, and fraud. According to West Rand-based publication Window News, Zach Valentine had faked his death and moved to the Free State after the murder of his wife in 2012. In reality, he had found refuge with the church group which took him in, when Zach deceived them using a new, false identity. The investigating officer, Ben Boyson, believed that Zach may have been motivated by money alone. He stated, "While the killings were violent, there was no ritualistic element to them." Cecilia Steyn and Miranda Steyn were arrested as they had been linked to the first 3 murders committed, along with LaRue Steyn and Marcel Steyn. At the time, the Sunday Times reported the gang usually pretended to be prospective clients and lured in young professionals whom they believed could assist them in accessing money. This was how John Anthony Bernard had come in. He was one of the workers at the local printing shop, which had belonged to Peter and Joan Meyer. According to police, the gang organised to meet with the victims at different places, including the Key West shopping centre in Krugersdorp. Then they would phone the victims and provide an excuse like their car had broken down, then reschedule to meet at a local hospital. Once the victims arrived, they would lure them into Miranda's flat, located directly opposite the hospital, tie them up and murder them. After this, the bodies were disposed of. In his confession, John Bernard had disclosed that when the gang had attacked the couple and discovered that the Myers didn't have the millions of rand they believed to possess in their safe, the gang lost it in the couple's home in Krugersdorp. Zach had stabbed the couple to death in a rage. It was after this murder that the gang hatched a plan to fake Zach's death in order to claim an insurance payout of over 3 million rand on his life. And Cecilia Steyn would be the sole beneficiary. LaRue, Valentine and Bernard had made friends with Jackson, one of the residents on their street. They invited him on a field trip to see the Free State, to which he agreed. While en route to the Free State, the trio strangled Jackson, put him in the driver's seat and set the car ablaze. Afterwards, Zach Valentine fled to the Free State and the group claimed that the demised Jackson was Zach Valentine. Unfortunately, the insurance company did not find their claim convincing enough and therefore declined to pay out. They were still broke, and so they decided to change their modus operandi. John Bernard suggested they hire professionals, and that's when the next phase began. In dire need of money, the gang booked an appointment with a tax consultant, Glenn McGregor. Upon meeting with him, they successfully coerced him into making money transfers into Miranda Steyn's bank account and proceeded to shoot him in the stomach with a 9mm pistol afterwards. He died from the wound. Schofield, McAlpine and Lakin all suffered the same fate as McGregor had. The 2012 murders, Boonzire, Berger and Pastor Reginald Ben Dixon, were believed to be linked to a rivalry that had existed between two factions of the Overcomers Through Christ Church or group. The aim of the church group was to deliver Satanists by converting them to Christianity. The Steyn gang had broken away from the church and formed the Electus Per Deus, chosen by God, group. One theory touted by local media at the time was that victims may have been killed in a revenge plot against Grunwald and fellow members of the church, a plot which had been masterminded by Cecilia Steyn. Ria Grunwald, a founding member of and Bible teacher at the Overcomers Through Christ Church, had cut ties with Cecilia Steyn after they had a falling out. Immediately after cutting ties, Ria Grunwald started receiving different threat messages. One of them read, "Wherever I go, they fall like flies." Before the falling out, Ria and Cecilia were extremely close. She treated Cecilia like her daughter and told her everything about her. Cecilia Steyn had claimed that she was dying, so despite living a block away, Ria Grunwald spent most of her time in Cecilia's house to help her. However, in return, Ria only received public ridicule from Cecilia. Cecilia said Ria was stupid and was unworthy of being called a Christian. Things were to get worse when Cecilia started drugging Ria, who would wake up confused and disoriented. The drugging started when Ria began experiencing sleep deprivation and asked Cecilia for sleeping pills. The pills Cecilia gave her made her do strange things, like calling herself from one phone to the other. She also received a phone call from the church member one day, warning her to be wary of Cecilia, because Cecilia had been speaking ill of Ria and claiming that Ria had beaten her. Subsequently, Ria informed Cecilia that she wanted to transfer her maternal rights in the Overcomers Through Christ's Church to Miranda Steyn. Cecilia did not agree to this and stated that someone would have to die for such a handover to take place. Ria started keeping her distance from Cecilia and stopped visiting her like she used to. She also refused to invite Cecilia to the question and answer sessions she facilitated with her students. Even when High Day, a day when certain sacrifices were made, came up, Ria refused to attend. She received a call from Miranda telling her that one of Cecilia's death curses had been triggered. This required Ria to go to Cecilia's house and offer prayer to her. Ria remained in her own house and prayed for Cecilia there. The next day, and many days after, Cecilia was still alive. Before long, Ria began receiving death threats, and people close to her started dying. One day, Ria received a message. "I hope you said goodbye to Pastor Reginald Ben Dixon, and if you want to talk about it, we are outside in a white BMW." She called the pastor, but was unable to reach him, so she called his wife and told her to be careful. Later that day, Ria received a call informing her that Pastor Ben Dixon had been murdered. Michaela Valentine was killed by her husband's gang because she refused to support the murders of church members by the Steyn gang. In July of 2016, the police arrested LaRue and Marcel Steyn in connection with the June 2016 killings, and 2 other suspects were acquitted for the same crimes. After faking his death, Zach was arrested in connection to the crime, while Cecilia and Miranda Steyn were arrested for fraud with regards to Zach's fake death. This led to subsequent arrests, and the trials commenced eventually at the South Gauteng High Court. Miranda, LaRue and Bernard all signed guilty pleas in May of 2018. Considered the mastermind of the abhorrent murder schemes, Miranda Steyn has been sentenced to 390 years imprisonment. That is 275 years for 11 life sentences, and the remaining 115 for her other crimes. These include fraud, racketeering and management enterprise, defeating the ends of justice, illegal possession of ammunition and firearms, robbery, and accessory after the fact of murder. the sentences run concurrently. She serves this jail term in the Johannesburg South Prison. However, she still provided testimonies in the trial of Cecilia, Marcel and Zach, who all pleaded not guilty to 32 counts including fraud, intimidation, robbery with aggravating circumstances and murder. Here is Marinda Steyn speaking in court.
What happened the day of the murders? Can you inform the court?
Yes. Zach and I previously visited the Meyers, and on the day that they were killed was maybe the third time. I'm not sure how many times we were there, because we arrived at the gate and then they weren't available. Arranged a meeting and then they weren't available. We were supposed to give them financial advice. It's a long story. Okay. But so on that day, they were there, and unlike the previous times, the children were not there. Once before, the children were there. The children weren't there, so everything was fine. So we went ahead. Now the plan was to rob them and bind them and put them in the pool. The pool didn't have water in it before. When we arrived there that day, it did. But previously they were still working on the pool, and we bargained on that. Then nobody would find them. That was how I understood what we were supposed to do. Also, I wore long-sleeved clothes and jewelry to conceal my tattoos and everything. We gave wrong names when we saw them. Used a SIM card that I threw away afterwards. Stuff like that, so that they wouldn't be able to identify us afterwards. But then when we got there, I had a gun. So at a point when everybody was comfortable sitting and talking, I said, this is not going to work for me. And I took out the gun and I said, lie down. And we bound them between Zach and I, between us, we bound them with the cable ties. But he started acting weird. He always wanted to play around with arrows and swords and stuff like that. So on that day he had like weapons concealed on his body that I thought was like a little boy going on playing. But then he pulled one of these knives out, a big one, and he had that in his hand, and he started acting weird, and his voice changed. He was like speaking like that, funny, and said, lie down, and very, very aggressive with him, and the man didn't want to keep quiet. So he kept on yelling at him, and then at a point he looked at me like he's asking me a question, and we were asking them where is the key for the safe, because we were told by John Barnard that they kept money there. And on a previous occasion we were there, the one deceased actually bragged to me and said that he has 46 million rand in his safe. He just wants this venture that we were supposedly dealing now with him, getting him more money. The extra 4 million he wanted just for that extra, because he was going to start some water world place in Natal. Okay, so I knew there was money there, and we had to get the key of him. The man had a thing on his belt with a key in, and I wanted to get that from him, and he kept on getting his mouth thing off and saying stuff, and then Zach just went berserk and he started stabbing them. And I basically went into shock, because that was not how we planned to do it, and we didn't know where the money was yet. We didn't even have the key. I did, after he stabbed them, find the key on the man in that pouch on his belt, but never found the safe, because then Zach totally went berserk and he was running around like a headless chicken. And I went upstairs to go and look for the safe, because I had a feeling it had to be in their room or somewhere thereabouts. And he came after me with the stairs and said, no, we have to go.
LaRue signed a plea deal on May 16, 2018 and turned into a state witness. After his conviction of 7 counts, he was sentenced to a 35-year jail term with 10 years suspended on the condition that he testify against others in the gang. John Anthony Bernard also signed a plea deal in December 2018 and was also a state witness. He was convicted and sentenced to a 30-year jail term, with 10 years suspended on the condition that he testified against the others accused of the murders. On Monday, October 8, 2018, the trial of the remaining trio commenced at the South Gauteng Court in Johannesburg, but was adjourned to Tuesday, October 9, 2018, at the instance of Marcel's lawyer. He needed to consult the provisions of the Child Justice Act of 2008 to be sure where his client stood, considering she was a minor at the time the crimes occurred. According to the presiding judge Ellen Jacob Francis, the trial was expected to last until June 29, 2018. 2 months in all, and for this period the gang would remain in custody. Previously, prosecution had alleged that the gang had incited 3 men to murder Joshua, the son of Ria Grunwald. In total, the prosecution had 52 witnesses, and these witnesses collectively provided some bizarre testimony. LaRue revealed that most of the victims were strangled to death. He also alleged in October 2018 that Cecilia Steyn had told them that she was a witch, precisely a 42nd generation witch, and had joined the Overcomers Through Christ Church to be delivered from her satanic ties. They joined the group and moved closer to Cecilia in Krugersdorp. She was apparently ill, so they needed to look after her and had to pray for her and protect her from the satanic church. It was the same reason that Ria Grunwald had moved in with Cecilia. He also revealed that the ministry, the Electus Bordeus, was founded by Cecilia after she broke away from the Overcomers Through Christ, together with Zach and Michaela, in July 2012. The group existed to save ex-Satanist children. Cecilia threatened them that if anyone spoke ill of the church, they would be killed by the evil spirits that followed them. This was why LaRue never told his father anything about the ministry. However, another witness contradicted this testimony, saying that no such ministry had existed and that the group was just a get-together of friends. LaRue went on to describe this as a lie and said that the tattoos on their bodies were proof that the ministry indeed existed. LaRue went on to state that Cecilia had instructed them to plant homemade bombs under cars that belonged to Grunwald and some other Overcomers Through Christ members. She wanted all their properties destroyed. And after this was done, they had boasted of how proud they were of their actions. As for Natasha Berger, Cecilia was convinced that she was praying against the children of the Overcomers Through Christ and not for them. So she asked that a close eye be kept on Natasha. LaRue was tasked with the responsibility of stealing number plates that would provide Zach and Michaela Valentine with access to Natasha's complex unit. The duo then went to one of Natasha's friends, Joyce Boonzire, and asked her to invite Natasha over. The couple killed Natasha and proceeded to murder Joyce because she had witnessed the murder. It was after these 2 murders that Michaela told the group that she did not want to be part of the gruesome act anymore. Cecilia was unhappy about this. Therefore, the group started planning Michaela's murder. Zach fed his wife with sleeping pills, while Marcel and Miranda were sent over to kill her. They did this by hitting her head with a blunt weapon of some sort, before stabbing her to death. Pastor Reginald Ben Dixon, according to LaRue, had not necessarily done anything to the group. He was friends with Ria Grunwald and often preached at the Overcomer Through Christ gathering as a guest speaker. Cecilia, however, perceived him as a threat to the Chosen by God group and instructed that he be eliminated. For this purpose, Miranda and Zach were chosen. Miranda's son said that while the first 4 murders were pretty much linked to the Overcomers Through Christ group, the others were financially motivated, principally to raise funds for Cecilia. She complained that she was out of money and needed about 5,000 rand to see a psychologist on a weekly basis. She also said that she had delivered a woman from Satanism and the woman needed 23,000 rand to return to the Satan church that she had stolen from. With Cecilia, there was always need for finance. hence the need to rob financially comfortable professionals. That was when the second set of murders began. LaRue admitted to strangling Kevin McAlpine like he strangled Anthony Schofield, but only because his mother and Cecilia Steyn had ordered him to do it. He admitted to disposing of the murder weapon after the first murder. LaRue said he was the one who had phoned the victims to then lure them to their flat. His mother offered them coffee, and once they were safely in the flat, she aimed a revolver at them and ordered them to lie down. They collected their PIN numbers, while Marcel and John made the withdrawals of cash from the ATMs. He said that the reason for the last-minute change of venue was that, being professionals, the victims would likely record the appointments in their diaries. This meant that tracing the last known moments and movements of the victim would be extremely difficult. As for Hanley Lakin, Marinda had handled the fraud. Hanley had just arrived at the Kasana apartment block near the Netcare Hospital in Krugersdorp. Marinda and John lived in number 17 in the block. LaRue and Marcel lived in the same block, but with Cecilia and her family in number 1. While some witnesses allege that the murders were fueled by financial needs, as Marinda needed the money for tax, others claim that they were instigated by hate, considering Cecilia's fallout with one of the Overcomers Through Christ Church's pastors, her mother, Ria Grunwald. Cecilia was further accused by one of the witnesses of leading a cult and possessed a wide collection of knives. One of the witnesses, Cecilia's friend, revealed that Cecilia was passionate about knives and she had gifted Cecilia knives for her birthday. About 3 knives in total. Other witnesses revealed how Cecilia would perform demon cleansing. 65-year-old Karen Luning revealed that Cecilia, a self-proclaimed child psychologist, could tell if a person was pure by seeing a light over the person's head. According to her, after her baptism at the Overcomers Through Christ group, Cecilia assessed her and declared her clean. She had joined the group after she had gone through a tough period in her life and then attended the group's courses on knowing your enemy and knowing your saviour. During one of the gatherings, her car was bombed. After a member of the group was murdered, she received threatening text messages. One of them read, "Who's next? Is it you?" In her testimony, one of Marinda's colleagues, Jan de Klerk, revealed that weird teacher always kept to herself, remained in her classroom during breaks, and often preferred closed doors. She also had a stash of ammunition in her classroom. For Marcel, she was just 14 years old in 2012 when the killing started. It is not conclusive whether or not she partook, but it is believed that she watched. She is a bright student, having graduated school with 6 distinctions. Ria Grunwald was one of the 52 witnesses called by the state. She described Cecilia Steyn as a chief manipulator who had led other people to believe that she was sick and in need of constant medical care. She also revealed that Cecilia had claimed to possess satanic powers as she was Satan's bride. According to her, Cecilia told people that she would walk on water, turn into a wolf, make things appear and disappear, among other things. Grunwald and Cecilia's former best friend, Candice Rihavik, revealed that Cecilia told them that she could see through people and tell when a person is pure or has demons. Marinda Steyn testified in favour of her friend, doing her best to keep Cecilia Steyn as far out of the net as possible. She said that Cecilia had told her not to commit the crimes. She also said that Cecilia was not a Satanist, neither was she the ringleader of their group. She denied every piece of evidence that implicated Cecilia in the murders, including the confessions put forward by her own son, LaRue Steyn. She said that even though Cecilia mixed with the wrong people and was a rebel at school, she was not a Satanist because she had accepted Jesus and was really close to God. According to her, it was Zach Valentine who had approached her and told her of his plans to kill Natasha Berger. She did not take him seriously at first, but the next day Zach and Michaela Valentine phoned her to inform her that they had murdered Natasha and another woman. She told them to clean up the scene and ensure that their car was taken for a valet. She also told them to make sure that no one else knew about the murders. She further said that when they go to the pastor's residence dressed in police uniforms, costume that they had, Zach stood behind the pastor with an axe while she talked to him. He knocked the pastor to the ground using the axe. Marinda ordered him to stop. She wanted to kill him herself. She proceeded to lift his jersey and stab him in the stomach, and then went for his throat. She said that unlike what was believed, Valentine did not kill Michaela because of her decision to quit the group, but rather because she wanted to report to the police and she was unfaithful. She also said that the murder of the Myers was carried out by LaRue, Zach Valentine, John Anthony Bernard, and herself because they believed the couple to be in possession of 46 million rand, but left empty-handed after killing them. When it came to Zach Valentine's faked death, Marinda said that LaRue and John Bernard had helped Zach fake his death. They drugged a man and set him ablaze in Valentine's car. Marinda said that she had collaborated with Zach Valentine to murder the pastor because he was in her bad books for manipulating her friend Rhea Grunwald. In fact, Marinda threatened Zach that if he did not help her commit the murder, she would tell people how he had killed Natasha Berger and the other old woman. Marinda further stated that she was a devout Christian and she was convinced that having confessed, God had forgiven her. Judge Francis replied to this, saying that the Christianity he was raised in didn't believe in killings. Marinda proceeded to blame herself for how her kids turned out. She said that she may have spoiled LaRue as a child, as she kept covering him all these years. This had contributed to his turning the other way. The judge admitted to being confused by the testimonies as they were contradictory. He said that somebody had to be lying between Miranda Steyn, LaRue Steyn, John Anthony Bernard, Cecilia Steyn, and Zach Valentine because some of the things in their plea statements was not correct. He even proceeded to ask, "At what stage should I accept that what you are telling the court is true? Who should I believe?" The prosecutor, Garrett Roberts, expressed disbelief at the fact that Marinda was willing to take the fall for Cecilia and considered the cover-up for Marcel understandable since the latter is the witness's daughter. Marinda went on to say that God wants her to start a new life and she has received a verse from God telling her that she must confess and that God will forgive her. Marinda Steyn apologised and sought forgiveness from the victims' families. She said, "This is the first time I am asking for forgiveness. I face the anger from the families. I see the horror from their faces. They're still in pain. I am sorry for the anger and anguish I caused. It was never my intention to harm so many people." After this, she was excused as a witness. On November 19th, 2018, the state closed its case against the Krugersdorp Killers. The trial was postponed to March 13th, 2019. I'm the speaker, and my name is X.
If you enjoy listening to Crime Room, please give the show a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Crime Room is available now on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. Make sure to subscribe for updates when new episodes are released. Sign up to the Crime Room newsletter or submit episode suggestions at crimeroompodcast.com. That's crimeroompodcast.com. Find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Crime Room is narrated by X. Additional voicing by Matthew O'Reilly Kavanagh. This episode was written by Sandra Chikura. Produced by Rachel McDermott. Mixed and scored by Andrew Lynn. The Crime Room theme song is by Sarah Sherlock.